Christian Arnold is here. Let's get him on the show. What is up, Christian? How are you doing?
Hey guys, how's it going?
I hear in your voice too. He's a little upset too about the game last night. It makes sense. It makes sense.
That
All
was a
right.
tough one. That was a rough one to sit through.
It was a rough one to sit through, and as both of us being writers, obviously you're more high up than me. Having to write a post game article, anything about the game, I went to sleep. I didn't even write it last night. I woke up early. I said I can't do this. I can't do it. But all right, let's dive into what you have a new thing going on here. We'll get into it. Tell us a little bit about NYI Hockey Now.
Oh, I appreciate you guys allowing me to plug my nonsense. It's a new Islanders website. We're covering the Islanders extensively, similar to kind of what you're seeing with the Athletic. There's some free stuff. There's some premium stuff when you sign up for a membership. I know you have already signed up, so I do appreciate that. Good friend right there. So that's how you know, I think, right?
Yeah.
But we're doing a lot of good stuff. I think the whole idea is to give Islander fans a lot of really good content. Because there's obviously a lot of content out there when it comes to sports and stuff, but I think the Islanders are a bit of an underserved market, and you know, our task at hand is just to kind of provide Islander fans with more coverage and you know, good professional coverage. The idea is once things get back to normal, whatever that looks like down the road, we'll be on the road a little bit and more as things kind of get off the ground. We're going to have someone up in Bridgeport covering the Sound Tigers on a pretty regular basis as well. So we're really going to try and encompass the entire idea of the New York Islanders franchise from the top down.
Love it. I mean, you don't get sick of Islanders content unless it's about them blowing leads. But luckily for us, we haven't seen that really often over the last 2 years.
I can tell you, I get sick of Islanders content. That's because I'm a Rangers fan, though.
That's fair. That's totally fair. I get that. I totally do. As long as you're still clicking on it, though, I don't have a problem with you being sick of it.
Of course, I'm going to click on it. I love reading what you write. But obviously, you've been covering the Islanders all season, watching them very closely. And have they surprised you at all of how strong they've played this postseason? Obviously, they had a little hiccup in Game 4, but have they surprised you with their play?
Yeah, the postseason I think has been really interesting because I think it's kind of a return to form for the Islanders and really where we saw them at the earlier part of the year. I'm sure you guys both remember the way the Islanders are playing in October and November and a little bit of December. And that was really the Islanders at their best. They were fully healthy. They had bought into the Trotz system. They really were playing the kind of hockey that we're seeing right now. So it's not surprising considering the amount of injuries that they've had, especially the second half of the season. They lose Adam Pelech, which was huge, and no one really contemplated that being such a huge loss until it happened. You're without Casey Zizekas and Cal Clutterbuck at certain points. You're dealing with other injuries that you just really didn't foresee, and so that really hurt the Islanders. And I think now you see them at full strength. You see them with depth in a lot of positions that they didn't have depth earlier in the year, and that's certainly helped. So I think it's surprising to see how handily they had handled the Capitals up until this point, because I think even Barry Trotz wouldn't have really seen the 3-0 series lead going to Game 4, but obviously the Caps kind of turned it on a bit. But yeah, no, I think it's surprising in that sense. We all knew that the Islanders are good when they're playing their game. I don't think people really anticipated or maybe respected them enough to give them the credit that this was going to be a team that really could compete the way they have been in the postseason.
So was it a surprise, though, the way Semyon Varlamov has played this postseason, given the fact that he was consistent during the regular season, nothing too impressive. He made big saves at times, but he has come to life in these playoffs.
Yeah, no, I think you look at the way he's played, right? I think it's helped that the healthy defenseman in front of him, you have a healthy defensive core. You have a veteran like Andy Green who stepped in and filled in for Johnny Boychuk, who is healthy, by the way. So you really have this depth and these options for the team that you didn't have before. So that certainly helps, and it makes the Islanders goaltender's job a little easier. Thomas Greiss, too, would probably have the same benefit if he was in net. So I think on one hand, I think the consistency helps Varlamov. You know, I think we've talked about this before away from, you know, microphones and Twitter, and you know, he plays better when he's in there consistently, and he's basically been their starter for a while now, so it shouldn't have been too much of a surprise that he's been in there. Like I said, the help comes from the guys in front of him, and there's certainly a comfort level for them knowing that Varlamov he's made the big saves when he's had to. He hasn't faced a ton. The 29 shots that the Islanders gave up in Game 4 was the most they've given up in the entire postseason, which is incredible. And it really goes to talk about how the Islanders system works, especially in the playoffs. So that's only benefited Semyon Varlamov. And so that's great for the Islanders. He hasn't had to have a ton of work, but when he's had to face some tough shots, he's made the big saves. for the most part, I should say. The other night, maybe a little bit withstanding.
The other night, everyone was a little off, so we'll give them the benefit of the doubt. So the Achilles heel for the Islanders in the playoffs has been their power play. In this, they're 1 for 19 in this series. What changes can they make personnel wise on their power play to get this thing going? Because we saw in Florida, they had the Beauvillier line up for the quick one-timer, top of the circle, and it worked. Capitals know that's coming, and they're taking that away. What can they do?
Yeah, they've watched the game tape. I think a lot of the guys have said it over the last couple games. The Capitals have watched the game tape, and they've certainly adjusted, and they've made the necessary moves to counter that. That being said, I don't know. It's a good question because there's really not a lot of moves that they could do with the roster that they have, because as great as the Islanders are, they are a great, team first built roster. But when you look at what the Islanders need, and that's a score. Someone said that today earlier on Twitter to me, and they were spot on. The Islanders don't have a finisher on the roster really. Matt Barzal maybe, because he's their best player and he's essentially their star, but he's not the finisher that the Islanders need at the moment anyway. I don't want to take anything away from Barzal, but that's the big thing. The Islanders just don't have a finisher. They have a lot of great playmakers, especially when it comes to their special teams guys. They just don't have that finisher, and I think that's what's kind of lacking. Because you look at the Capitals, right? Everyone knows the puck's going Alexander Ovechkin. It's not a secret. Even if someone who has watched hockey for 2 days and they've just seen 2 Capitals games, everyone knows that Alexander Ovechkin's getting the puck on the power play. The problem with that, though, too, is that the Capitals also have a couple other weapons. The Islanders really don't have those options. The Islanders have Barzal, who maybe I guess is on the Capitals maybe is the secondary option when it comes to scoring, but they just don't have the finisher there, and I think that's kind of what you've seen brought to light here in the postseason, where they're just lacking that. That being said, though, I will say you look at when the Islanders have scored on the power play, it's come up in big moments, which has been very beneficial for them. So maybe they're not capitalizing on every power play chance that they get, but the ones that they have were certainly important moments in the game.
You look at the Capitals, and you have Ovechkin lined up in that one-time slot on the left side, and the Islanders have Bailey. So not a knock on Bailey, but he's no Ovechkin, and he's not going to take a shot like that. But yeah,
I mean, they did hit 2 posts, but Villiers hit a couple of posts on the power play in that game too. So it's a little bit of bad puck luck, but they did lose focus last night after getting out to an early 2-0 lead. Do you think the Capitals just woke up, or was it more on the Islanders for getting a little sloppy?
I think it was a little bit of both, because the Capitals certainly they were pissed. I think you sensed that frustration when Alexander Ovechkin just went after Casey Cizikas. In a normal game, Alexander Ovechkin is not going after Casey Cizikas. It just doesn't make a lot of sense. And I looking back on it, hindsight's always 2020. I know I tweeted last night that kind of a shot at that. I'm like, I hope that getting that frustration was worth it for Ovi, because he got called for a 2-minute power play penalty, and it was, because after that you really sensed that the Capitals kind of got a kick in the pants, and their urgency was there, and the battle level was there, and like all those coaching cliches that we hear and we kind of just roll our eyes on, they exemplified them after that, because the Islanders had dominated the first 10 minutes of that game. And I think there was a lot of people that were just ready to go, all right, this series is done. Islanders have booked their ticket. And the Capitals, to their credit, they just said, screw that. And they came back and they fought and they played the way they needed to. That also threw the Islanders off their game a bit, because you saw all the Islanders get kind of tossed around a little bit. The Capitals were playing their game. They were playing their frustrating physical style of hockey, and they threw the Islanders off. And that's not to say the Islanders can't play physical hockey, but they had their pests doing what their pests do best, and that was kind of giving the Islanders a hard time. It was forcing the Islanders to take silly penalties. Matt Barzal taking 2 penalties in the first 5 minutes of the second period was brutal. And that really led to the 2 goals that the Capitals scored to tie the game. And then it was just downhill from there, because once they had the momentum, the Capitals never took their foot off the gas. And they were pounding away at the Islanders and pounding away at the Islanders and pounding away at the Islanders. And they, for the first time, the Islanders looked tired and they looked worn down for the first time really in the postseason. Because if you look back at Game 3 against the Panthers, even then, the Islanders were playing their game. They were the better team 5-on-5 that entire game. It was a lot of silly mistakes and special teams that cost them. This game, special teams cost them, silly mistakes cost them, and then the Capitals' game plan just cost them. The Capitals just wore them down, and that was a very interesting thing to see. And the momentum right now is in the Capitals' favor because they're playing with house money. They have nothing to lose at this point. The pressure is on the Islanders. The pressure is on the Islanders not to choke at this point because now the Capitals are feeling it. And that's a little concerning if you're an Islanders fan, because once the Capitals start to feel it, their game plan certainly gets going and their game play certainly runs teams ragged. That's not to say the Islanders seemed concerned when we spoke to them over the Zoom calls the last couple days or so, but it's definitely something to keep an eye on because the momentum shifted for sure.
Yeah, I was actually kind of shocked the Capitals didn't come out of the gate the way the Islanders did yesterday. You expected them to come out flying, and then, they go down 2 goals, a timeout's called, and then this game just completely changes. And yeah, the Islanders got bullied around. You saw their top defensive pair. They played sloppy, but it looked like they were tired. They're worn down. They're playing a lot of minutes. We'll get to it in a second. Cal Clutterbuck, he leaves the game, doesn't return. You tweeted out that it looks like he's ready to go. Regardless, though, do you see Ross Johnson sliding into this lineup somehow, maybe on the third line to take Komarov's spot, or you think he, rides the bench and they stick with the same group?
Right now, it's tough to say. Barry Trotz, the Islanders head coach, did say that that they were looking at making changes at the lineup. Obviously, I think Islander fans their first thought is, all right, let's get Ross Johnson there because they want to match the physicality. And I think it's fair to point out, while Ross Johnson certainly does that, the Islanders' style is more suited towards putting in a guy like Tom Kuhnhackl and then possibly putting in Johnny Boychuk back in the lineup for Andy Green, because Boychuk certainly helps out on the special team side of things. So does Kuhnhackl. So those are options that are in play too. I certainly wouldn't discount that, and not to say that Ross Johnson there isn't a chance he gets in. We'll find out at some point tomorrow whether Barry Trotz mentions it. If the Islanders have availability before the game, or it turns out we see him on the ice for warmups and then in the subsequent lineup. But there's a chance that it's not Ross Johnson, and there's a chance it's Kuhnhackl, and there's a chance it's Boychuk. We just don't know at the moment. Anything's possible at this point, but I don't want people to get too disappointed because they want to see that kind of that tough guy out there in Ross Johnson, and then it ends up being Tom Kuhnhackl.
Well, yeah, if you put, like you said, if you put Ross Johnson in there, that's playing to the Capitals' way. The physicality, that's just trying to block out them. But that's not the Islanders' game plan. It's defensive. It's using the opportunities they do get. And Ross Johnson's a great skater for his size. He can definitely handle Wilson. But, do you want to put a guy like that in that moment? He might take an undisciplined penalty, and that might come back to bite the Islanders.
Yeah, no, I mean, my concern is even that as far as taking an undisciplined penalty, because I don't think that Ross Johnson really has that nature in him per se. But it's just putting in the right fit, and the Islanders have always gone with what fits them in the best situation. That's really the game plan for Barry Trotz when he was talking earlier today about what kind of changes. They're going to have some meetings, they're going to figure it out, they're going to look at the situations, and then they'll go from there. And that's really the way Trotz has coached, forever, and especially since he's got here with the Islanders.
So you mentioned how the Capitals gained a little bit of momentum and they're playing with house money. Do you think that although it's not necessarily a must win, that Game 5 feels like the Islanders need to take it to stop and halt all the Capitals' momentum?
Oh, yeah. I think, I wrote a little bit today on NYI Hockey Now about that. The Islanders, they've been in this situation before. They did it with the Florida Panthers last round. They've done it before when it comes to getting things back on track with the Game 1, the way they played through the first, 38 minutes or so of that game. And the Islanders have to do that now. They cannot afford to give the Capitals the momentum, because once you give the Capitals the momentum back in the game, all bets are off. There's a reason why this team was a Stanley Cup champion 2 years ago. There's a reason why they're a perennial favorite every year in the division, in the conference. Because they have such a talented roster there that you give them the chance to play their game and their style, and you give them a little bit of life, they're going to run. They're going to run and take that, and it's going to be a tough game. It's going to be a tough battle for the Islanders. They have to find that resolve. They have to find that will to go out there and close the series out and not give the Capitals any sort of momentum that they would get from that. So I think you're not wrong in saying that it's kind of turned into a must win, because you don't want to give the Capitals that life and say, hey, we're keeping you guys in there, or we're giving you the chance to stay in there. So you just don't want to play that game at this point.
Well, Christian, thank you very much for joining us. Guys, this is Christian Arnold of NYI Hockey Now. Go check out his stuff. Great writer, and he's covering the Islanders throughout the postseason. So definitely follow him on Twitter and keep up to date with his new project, NYI Hockey Now.
Thank you guys. Really appreciate the time.
See you, bud.